my head going to be in it?
The scripture passage this morning is the same as it was last week, because as I said, I'm spending 2 sermons on this passage. It's in the Gospel according to Matthew, in the 5th chapter, verses 33 through 37. This is Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. Again, you have heard that it was said to those of ancient times, "You shall not swear falsely, but carry out the vows that you have made to the Lord. But I say to you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. And do not swear by your own head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let your word be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything more than this comes from the evil one." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Okay, so I said that I was doing 2 sermons based on this passage, one positive, one negative. The negative one was last week and was about lying. Great teachers in the church all through history have seen this passage as, in part, admonishing us against lying. Luther said, for instance, if someone is the kind of person who would tell a lie anyway, what makes you think that swearing an oath would make their word truthful? So this whole business about oaths and taking oaths and swearing oaths touches on our tendency as human beings to lie. But I want to go this week to the positive side, because Jesus doesn't just say don't do that. He says don't do that for a reason, and ends with a more positive command to let your yes be yes and your no be no. Now this whole business about swearing oaths has been a problem for the church for 1700 years, because governments have always expected people to take oaths. And almost every interpreter of this passage for most of the last 1700 years has tried to explain it away, has tried to explain how it is all right for us to take oaths. They sort of split it. They say you have to obey Jesus' word and not make up an oath yourself, and not swear up and down in order to try to guarantee your word, and not curse, and not exaggerate. But if the government requires an oath of you, then you can take it. That always seems to me like trying to get around what the passage plainly says. Because after all, Jesus knew full well that governments expected people to take oaths in his own day. And the church interpreters have done this because in part they're afraid that if people refuse to take any oaths with the government, it will look to the rest of the world like we Christians are refusing to be committed to our fellow citizens, refusing to be committed to the process of truth and justice in a trial, would be refusing to be committed to be part of something bigger than ourselves. And I think that that's a problem. It's a problem in interpretation because we're trying to get around it, and it's a problem because we don't see the depth of what Jesus is saying here. The point I want to make, and I'm going to come back to it several times, is that our mere yes, yes, that's what I say, our mere no, that's not it, should be as strong and as truthful and as firm a commitment as anyone else's oath. There is a positive meaning here, and the positive meaning is that we should be truth tellers and people whose commitments are honest and sincere, even from our own simple declaration, without needing to swear an oath or to bind ourselves artificially. Part of the problem with oaths is that they're exaggerations or they're attempts to conquer non-serious talk. For instance, We all know the witness oath. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do. Take your seat in the witness stand. I was once a witness at a church court, and I said, I can't take the oath in that form. Now, traditionally, the courts have allowed Christians to say not I swear, but to say I affirm, which just means I really am saying. And so they said, do you need to say affirm instead of swear? And I said, no, actually, it's the rest of the oath that's a problem. I swear to tell the truth. Well, except for the word swear, I got no problem with that. I'm here to tell the truth. But the whole truth, you can't tell the whole truth, at least not in finite time. Moreover, if I try to tell the whole truth in a trial, in a court, the lawyers will say, whoa, only answer the question I asked. Don't volunteer extra information. The judge will warn you if you try to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. I'm sorry, but that's not possible in human language. Everything we say has some ambiguity to it, and sometimes the other side of the ambiguity isn't true, even with the part we're trying to say is true. The problem with the oath is that it's an exaggeration in an attempt to make us take seriously the simple requirement that we tell the truth. It exaggerates what we mean by the truth and what it means to tell it. And I think that it's those exaggerations that are one of the reasons why Jesus is against oaths. I said to the church court, I said, I can take the oath in this form. I'll tell the truth as far as you ask for it, as best as I can. And I will pray that God will help me do this. Now, I'll bet you if I did that in front of a secular court, the judge would say, that's what the oath means. You should have just accepted it the way it's written. And I, would say, wait a minute, this is a court of law. Isn't this where we try to take our words exactly and seriously? And those exact words are the problem. But I think that the way I put it captures the heart of what Jesus is doing here. He's rejecting oaths because oaths are an attempt to make up for the fact that we don't mean what we say seriously in ordinary conversation. Our simple yes is not a guarantee of truthfulness. Our simple commitment is not a guarantee that we'll actually do it. Sitting around the dinner table talking about the world and politics and the need for justice and the need to protect our country, we might say casually, yeah, I'd give my life for my country. That won't be good enough if we enter the armed services, because that's casual conversation around the dinner table. You take an oath when you enter the Army or Navy or Marines or Air Force, because the oath means, wait a minute, stop, think about it. This is not casual conversation. And now that this is not casual conversation, do you make this promise? And I think that Jesus is saying, hey, look, even the things you say in casual conversation should be fully true and a complete commitment of yourself. Casual conversation should not be so that you can get out of stuff. And we do that all the time. Here we are making plans, who'll do this, who'll do that. Well, I'll take care of this. And it means there's a 75% chance that I'll take care of that. Who's coming to dinner next week? I'll be there. There's a 60% chance that you'll actually be there. Traditionally, in American etiquette, an invitation to a dinner party was inviolate. You never broke that commitment unless you were either in the hospital or I saw this once in an etiquette column. Someone said, how do you write a letter to explain that you cannot keep a commitment to go to a dinner party? And the person answering it said, there is only one form that's correct for saying that you won't be able to make a commitment you made for a dinner party. And it goes like this: owing to an invitation from the President of the United States, I will be unable to attend. and it went on from there. Because the rule was, hey, this is the highest level of commitment in social engagements. If you promise to go to a wedding or a party or something, that doesn't rank as high as a dinner party invitation. The problem is that we make statements about what we'll do in casual conversation or just while we're making plans that we don't take as seriously as if it were an oath. We only mean by that that there's a high probability that we'll do it. This comes up sometimes with grandchildren. Hey, we're going to the aquarium in Baltimore the week after next. And something comes up and we have to reschedule it. Gramps, you said we were going to the aquarium. Yes, I did, and we will. I promise you, we're going the first week of October. Now we've tried to nail it down, say something that's more than casual. Actually, there's probably a half dozen different events of one kind or another that can even interfere with it the first week in October when we said, I promise. And then we'll have to say, all right, I promised, and I will keep the promise sooner or later. Again, our yes hasn't been yes 100%, and our no hasn't been no. We keep thinking that we can make casual conversation and say things casually, and they're not really binding. And the lesson that Jesus is trying to teach is not so much about rejecting oaths or not having commitments to others. It's about being serious, honest, truthful, and fully committed about the things you say. The simple things you say in ordinary conversation, in ordinary planning. Our simple yes should be more powerful than an oath. Our simple commitment should be more firm than someone else's commitment with a promise or an oath. The simplest things that we say as believers in Jesus, as children of God, should make a difference in the world. Should be things that other people can count on. How will they learn to trust God whom they have never seen if they can't trust what we say? Because we are what they see of God at first glance. So we should mean what we say. Now, I'm going to give us a simple example to practice for the challenge of the week. It's minor, it's small, but it has the advantage that it's something that can be practiced in order to get better at it. I want us to take seriously saying thank you. I want us to say thank you all this next week and really mean it. Not just use it as a social exchange that's automatic. Oh, thank you. You know, thank you to the clerk, thank you to the waitress, whatever. I want us to take it more seriously than that and really mean it. Partly, we can say a little more. We can say, thank you very much. I appreciate that. That second sentence, that I appreciate that, makes people hear that you really meant it when you say thank you. Mind you, you have to really mean it. You have to say to yourself, hey, people don't have to do things for you. Even when you think they do, they don't have to. You can get lousy service. You can have people break promises. You can run into casual assertions that other people made that they didn't regard as a real commitment. So if they do keep them, then they've done something special for you. And it deserves your thanks. This is one of the ways that we can practice making sure that we really mean what we say. Because that's the other element. The simple statement, the motto maybe, that we could get out of what Jesus says in this passage. Mean what you say. Really mean it. Maybe you could practice with compliments or something else. Now the big thing in this passage, but the one that's harder to practice, so I'm not assigning it as a challenge of the week, is this is really about keeping promises. Because oaths are intended to be promises that are taken seriously and are made for real and not just casually. And Jesus is rejecting oaths not because he doesn't want us to make promises, but because he wants the simple things we say to be as good as promises. And Scripture does speak about keeping promises. It says, you shall keep the vows that you have made. Jesus cites that in the Old Testament. And he has said earlier in this sermon, he said, I'm not here to throw out the old law, but to fulfill it by making it more complete. If your simple word is good, then how much more so your promise should be. Blessed is the man who swears a promise and it later turns out that he'll be hurt by keeping it, and the man keeps the promise anyway. That's from Proverbs. I've translated it freely. So promises and promise keeping are a part of our faith. Jesus is not trying to say don't make promises. He's trying to say that our promises should be simple and straightforward and spring from the fact that we really do mean what we say. But promises are more difficult, and it's hard for me to make up a challenge assignment for you because I don't know what promises you have made lately or made a long time ago that are still in effect and that have to be carried out. So as a smaller thing, to practice meaning what we say for real, practice saying thank you seriously, honestly, and with just a tiny bit of extra so the other person realizes that they're truly being thanked. And not just being thanked casually and automatically because we're taught to say, please and thank you. Please and thank you. Say please and thank you. What's the magic word? And we treat it as though it's an automated routine. An automated routine. Well, if it's automated, then it doesn't involve a commitment of our will. So try this week to say thank you as if you really mean it. But be looking forward, looking over the top of that, looking deeper in your heart, because the real thing that we're trying to get at is the meaning of our promises and the seriousness with which we take them and the simplicity with which we make them. And perhaps we should learn to make our promises more carefully. James says, do not say, tomorrow we're going to go to a certain city and buy and sell and make our money. But rather say, if God wills, if God wills. You see, I should say to my grandchildren, I am making plans for us to go to the aquarium the week after next, but those plans depend upon other things, and I'll let you know how they turn out. And then when the plans don't turn out, it's still true that I made those plans, and now I'm revising those plans so that we'll go in October. We should make the promise that we can keep. We should make the promise that we can keep. And the people who are capable of making promises that they can keep are the people whose words change the world and make it what it is. So, that's our word for this morning. This is a challenge. Take special care with saying thank you. And then, less practically, but just think ahead, think over the top towards what it means to make a promise. And to make a promise even with the simplest things you say. Music? Kill the recorder.